Hello and welcome to today's webinar in our Fabric series. Today we are going to be talking about deployment pipelines in Fabric, and in this case we are going to be comparing how this DevOps process can be implemented in Fabric and using two different tools, Fabric deployment pipelines versus Azure DevOps pipelines. So what's going to be our agenda for today? First of all, we'll start with an introduction of DevOps in Fabric, a high-level introduction, and then afterwards we will take a look on the two approaches that Microsoft is also recommending for this type of solutions in case you want to implement DevOps solutions in Fabric. Afterwards, we will deep dive into each of the solutions that we are going to explore in this demonstration and also showcase how this can be implemented inside Fabric and also, of course, inside Azure DevOps. After that, we will compare head to head each of the solutions that we showcased. And finally, we will wrap up to the conclusions and try to explain which solution can be more appealing and depending on your project characteristics. So first, let me introduce a little bit Fabric. For most of you that are seeing this video, you may already be familiar with that, but basically Fabric is a platform that provides the whole analytic and data tools that you may need, so storage, computation, capacity to create data science solutions, or visualizations, and also delivers the capacity to govern the whole thing into the same platform. By why do you may need DevOps in Fabric? Basically, because it is going to improve the way you develop solutions without impacting business. So it fasters the deployments in a more secure way. It improves collaboration because you can deliver while business keeps using your productive solution. So it continues, it enhances CI/CD, so continuous integration and continuous development. And of course, it eases the governance and the automatization of your solutions in Fabric. Let's go now and see which are the two main approaches that we are going to be discussing on this webinar. On one hand, we have Fabric Deployment Pipelines, which is the tool that is already integrated inside Microsoft Fabric. And it's built for non-technical users that are already working or start working on this solution. And it may be much more familiar for these users that are Power BI based and maybe are starting to be introduced into the Fabric platform, or for your data engineers or data science engineers that would like to start working on the platform. The UI it's much more simpler and it's not code based. The only problem here is that you have the limited features that Microsoft is providing, but just to let you know that they are constantly improving this tool and adding new features to it. On the other hand, we have the Azure DevOps pipelines. In this case, this is much more code-centric solution, which uses YAML and it's a class and or classic pipelines inside DevOps. And you may have knowledge in not only in YAML structures, but also in Python code or or other encoding solutions that let you interact with APIs that are available to reach Fabric and provide the solution that you require. Of course, it enables much more complex CI, so CD solutions automatization across services and lets you interact with much more additional services inside the Azure platform. And it's not only closed within the Fabric platform solution. So in this case, the overview of the two deployment options that we are going to be discussing are one of the two mains that Microsoft itself recommends on the documentation of Fabric on how you can implement DevOps inside Fabric. So basically, we have the first one, which is going to be basically built and relied on Fabric deployment pipelines. So only inside the platform, and we are going to be deploying an easy solution between different stages and see which are the possibilities that we have in there. On the other hand, then we have the DevOps pipeline solution, which is going to be running, of course, also in Fabric, but the main orchestration and delivery tool here is going to be DevOps, and we are going to be interacting through DevOps into Fabric using the available APIs to interact with the system. So basically here is going to be the CI/CD Fabric API and the Power BI Fabric API to interact with the platform from DevOps Azure. So here you can see the two main schemas of the solutions that we are going to be discussing. So one you can see it's only relying on DevOps, and the other one it's more Azure relied on based on the Git system of storage of code. So it's going to be much more code based and using some of the key concepts of Git. All right. So now let's deep dive on Fabric deployment pipelines. First of all, it's going to be the first use case that we are going to showcase. And in here, we would like to discuss which are the pros and cons of this specific solution. As we already mentioned, this is a native integrated in Fabric. It's much more easy to use. It supports workspace environments, so you can deliver that through your workspace in case you have development workspace, test, and production. It's of course it's a mandatory to have your different stages divided between workspace because are the main container part inside Fabric. So you will need to be distributed between that. And here also it's very related to the role-based access control. So each of these workspace or stages needs to be deployed based on this role-based access control, and this can be delivered within the Fabric deployment pipelines. And another positive part from here is that it has less operational overhead as a solution. So you don't really rely a lot on infrastructure or on any other additional support from your IT team. So it's only based on Fabric platform. On the other hand, the limitations of this solution is that it has much more less customization. So you are only relying on the features that are available or that Microsoft provides. So it's much more limited in that terms. It's not extensible beyond Fabric, so you cannot really interact with any additional platform tools. Let's say that you have signups or Databricks. It's only closed within the options that you have built in Fabric, and the workflow it's much more simple, so you don't have that many possibilities even to add triggers or add approvals. It's much more close on what this tool can provide that we are going to showcase you in the demonstration. So let me introduce you my colleague Mark, that he is going to drive you through this demonstration and explain you the solution that we built in to showcase.
Thanks, Marcel, for this introduction. So in this first demo of the video, I'm going to show you how the Fabric deployment pipelines work in Fabric. First of all, I'm going to show you the use case that we have and all the items that we have created in this workspace. Okay, so basically the use case that we have is an end-to-end project, starting from extracting the data from the data sources to a final report using Power BI. So let's start for showing you the different items that we have here. As you can see, the first item is the data pipeline. So basically, we are using this pipeline to copy the data from a Microsoft template into our lakehouse. Okay, so here you can see the different copy data activities. So we are copying 5 dim tables and finally the fact table. Then, as I told you, we are using Cal Data Lakehouse as a first stage. We can find this lakehouse here in the storage folder. As you can see here, we have 2 different items. First of all, we have the lakehouse. It's where we are copying the data, and then we have the warehouse. This warehouse is the item that we will use to populate our semantic model and where we have the data after the transformations. So in order to transform the data and clean it, we are using a notebook. We can find it here in the first folder. Here we have a data cleaning notebook where we have different cells, but let's go to the most important one. So here, for example, we have a custom function to insert the timestamp in all the different tables that we have. Then we have other transformations. For example, here we have we are creating a new column for the price category. We have the low, the medium, and the high category. And finally, we have the write to the warehouse. So it's where we are taking the transformed data from this notebook and we are writing it to our warehouse, okay? As I showed you just a couple of minutes before, we have the warehouse in the same folder as the lakehouse, as we are using it as the storage. So in this case, we have the warehouse here, okay, the retail data land with all the data transformed. We can click here, and here in the schemas, we have the DVO schema, and inside we have the different tables we have created after the transformations. Then I would like to show you another thing here in the notebook. As you can see in the first cell, we have a variable library. Okay, we are using this one, VL parameters. I'm going to show you right now what it is, but basically we are using this library in order to have the different names for the workspace, the lakehouse, and the warehouse for the 3 different environments that we will be using in this POC. Why we need this library? We need this library because when we deploy items to the next stages, we don't need to change manually all the names, so we can use this library to directly take or get the items from it. So the thing here is where we store all these variables. We have them here in this last folder. Inside we have a variable library, and here we have 3 different variables. We have the workspace name, we have the lakehouse name, and then we have the warehouse name. And then we set the type as a string, and we have 3 different boxes. So we have 1 box for every environment that I will show you a couple of minutes after. So basically, as now we are in the development environment, we have this box as active, but then when we first deploy all the items to the integration stage or also the production stage, we need to set here the different names, okay, for the variables. For the lakehouse and the warehouse, it's exactly the same name, but for the workspace name is different. So for dev, it's ending with dev, integration it's ending with int, and for production it's ending with pro. Last but not least, we have the last folder that I want to show you, which is the reporting one. Here we have the semantic model and also the report that is populated using this semantic model. Okay, so in the semantic model, we can open, and here we have the different tables. We have the 5 themes and the fact that I showed you before. And then we have also here a measure table with, in this case, we have 1 measure, the profit measure. Finally, we have inside the same folder, the reporting folder, we have the report, which is the final product for this POC. We have here a custom dashboard with the different slicers and some charts that we have created. So these are all the items that we have right now in the development environment. What I'm telling you about the development environment is that because we have 3 different workspaces. Apart from the development environment, as I told you some minutes ago, we have also the integration environment and also the production environment. In this case, we have three different stages in the deployment pipeline. In order to go to the deployment pipeline, we can go from here, deployment pipelines, or also in the 3 dots, and here we have the deployment pipelines. In this case, this is our pipeline, is the POC1. And here, this is the deployment pipeline user interface. Basically, we have 3 different stages as we have 3 different workspaces. As you can see here, we have linked the workspaces to the corresponding environment or stage. In this case, we have the dev 1 to it's linked to the development stage, then the integration to the integration 1, and finally the production to the prod 1. What we have here, the different items that we have in the development workspace, and here we can see the difference between the 3 different environments, because at the end we are using the deployment pipelines to deploy items from different workspaces. So in this case, as you can see here, we don't have any number. That's why previously to this demo, sorry, we have created, we have deployed all the items. Where we can see this, we can see this here in the deployment history. The first one, it's this one. And as you can see here, the new items, we have here the 7 different items that we have deployed. As you can see, the deployment 2 is integrations. That's why we have deployed the items from the development stage to the integration stage. Here we can see also a node. In this case, it's a pre-demo deployment. And finally, we have an ID, basically the deployment ID, and finally the status, which in this case is succeed. That's why here we don't have any item to compare, because all the items that we have in integration are the same that we have in the development. Here, in this case, in production, we have a 7. That's why the 7 items that we have in integration are not yet deployed to production. If we click here, we can see the different items that are only available in the source. In this case, the source is integration. But let's go step by step. The first thing that I want to show you is how to do some changes to the items that we have in the development stage, and then how the deployment pipeline looks when we try to deploy them to the integration stage. That's why we will need to go to the development workspace. We can click directly here, so we don't have to go back to the workspaces and click the one that we want. So once we are here, we will try to do some changes. We're going to start with the semantic model. Okay, so in this case, I will create a new measure to the semantic model that we have. So to do so, we will go to the semantic model, and we can click here in open the semantic model. Okay, so once we are here, by default, we are in a viewing mode. So we need to change that to the editing mode. So once we are editing, as I told you before, here we have the profit measure, which is basically a sum of the profit that we have in the fact sales table. So I'm gonna do the same for the quantity, that it's another measure that we have in the fact table. In order to do so, we go to the measures table, we click here, and we create a new measure. So here we can use the quantity name, and it's just a sum of the quantity which is available in the fact sales. Okay. Once we have the DAX ready, we can click here to save it. And now we have the measure. Okay, this by default this is saved. So now if we go to the report, we should see the new measure. So we can close here, and now we can go again to the development stage, and instead of the semantic model, we will go to the report. Okay, so here in the report, we will go to the edit button in order to edit. It's so that we can use the PVI desktop in order to do some changes, but we have also this functionality here to edit the charts directly using the PVI service. And if we go here to the measure folder, we can see that the quantity measure is already created. So we can do here a quick change. For example, in this chart, we have the top 3 employees by profit. We can change this profit and use the quantity 1. And also we are using here a top 3 in the filter. So instead of having the top 3 by the profit, we can change that to use the quantity also, as it's the same value that we are using in the chart. Okay. Also, we can go to the title, and instead of profit, we can change that by quantity. Okay, so now that we have changed this, We can save it here on the top right. So the report is saved, so we can already close it. Okay, and the last thing that I would like to change is basically in the notebook. Okay, so as I told you before, here in the notebook we have a use case. We have a case functionality to create a new column for the price category. So let's say that we have a new business requirement that we need to change some numbers. So in this case, for example, instead of 20, we would like to use the 50 here for the low category. So we'll need to change this 50 here. In this case, it's saved by default. We don't need to save it anywhere. As here you can see it's a save as, but as we already have, you can control S, sorry, in case you want to double check, but it's already saved. So once we have all the changes done, we need to go to the deployment pipeline again and refresh it to see if we have now the changes applied. Now, as you can see, we have a number 3 here. That's why we have 3 different changes in 3 different items. We can click here. An important thing to comment here is that when we want to deploy to the integration stage, we need to select the integration stage, not the development. So we are always selecting the target, not the source. Okay. In this case, as you can see here, we have only the folders. We cannot see the items. We need to check individually every folder. So for example, here in the reporting, we can see the semantic model and also the report, and we see that is different, both of them, from the source. Previously, we had here a limitation because we were not able to deploy items from different folders in the same deploy. But now we have here a new functionality, which is called the flat list, that we can click and we can see all the files or all the items that we have inside the folders. So it's now we have the possibility to deploy items from different folders. In this case, we have here the notebook, which is different from the source, and also the semantic model and the report. So in order to deploy these items, we need just to select them and deploy. Before, we have the possibility also to compare what we have changed. So here in this button, we can click. And as you can see here, we have the items that have been modified. An important thing here is that, as you can see, we don't have the report, even if before we can see that the report is different from the source, but we can only see here in the compare the changes done to the semantic model, not the report. So in this case, we can see here the different changes that we have done. And here on the right, you can see all the things that have changed. The same for the notebook. So if we click here in the notebook, we can quickly go to where you can see the red and green, and here you can see what we had before and what we have now in the current stage to be deployed, as you can see here. So you can see basically on red what we have deleted, and in green the new code or the new lines. Okay. Once we are done with comparing, we can close here and we can select the different items that we want to deploy. In this case, it's the notebook, the report, and then the semantic model. The deployment is from development, which is it's already fine because it's the first stage. So we click to deploy. The last thing before the deployment is here. We have the possibility to add a note. In this case, it's important here to add a note just to track what we have changed, because in this case, we cannot track the versions that we have deployed. In the second demo, Victor will explain you how it's possible to integrate Git here in order to control the different versions. But in this case, the only thing we can do is to add a note here. So we can, for example, for the semantic model, we can change, or we can add here that we have added a measure. added a quantity measure. Then for the report, we are using the quantity measure. And finally, for the notebook, we have changed the case. So using this node, we have the track of the changes that we have done, and we will deploy. So we just click on deploy, and we will need to wait. This could take a couple minutes. Now here we have the message that successfully deployed the content to int, which is the name of the workspace or the stage. And here we can see successful deployment, and we don't have the 3 anymore, as now all the items from the integration are same as source, which is the development one. Also here in the deployment history, we can see the new deployment. Here we can see not 7, we have 3 different items, and if we click, we can see the 3 different items. We have the notebook, the semantic model, and also the report. Here in the node, we can see the comments that we have added, and finally an ID and the status, which is succeed. Okay, so now that we have all the items already in integration, let's say that we are happy to deploying them to production. So we will need to do the same, but in this case for the production stage. If we click here in the production box, we can see that all the items are only in the source because they are only in the integration stage. So as we are happy to deploy them, we can select all of them. You can click on this box here, and we can click the deploy button, as we don't have to compare anything, as we still don't have any item in the production stage. So we can click on deploy, and we can add a note saying that deploying all items to production stage, and we just deploy. Okay, so now we have the notification that successfully deployed content, in this case to production. So we can change, we can check the deployment stage and the deployment history here. In this case, the deployment is production. Then we have 7 new items, which are the different items that we have deployed. And finally, we have the note saying that deploying all items to production stage. And finally, the ID and the status, which is succeed. Now that we have deployed, we can check the deployment workspace, the production workspace. So we can click here directly, and we can see that now we are in the production workspace, and that we have the different folders with all the items inside. Okay. The first thing that we need to do here, after the first deploy to a new stage, which is this case, we need to check the variable library, because as I told you before, we are using this library in order to parameterize all the notebook variables. In this case, we can see the default value is the development environment, but now as we are in the production environment, we need to use this one, the last box. So in order to activate this one, we just need to click here and set as active, and set as actives. Once we have these production values are active, we just need to click here on the top left to save. And we agree that modifying the variables should affect the items. Okay, so it's successfully saved. So we can already close here, and we go back to the deployment pipelines here. Okay, so as you can see now, we don't have any number here on the top right of any of the boxes. That's why in this case, for example, that we are selecting production, all the items are the same as source, which is in this case, the source is integration, not development. Okay, so now that we have all the items in the production workspace, we can run. First of all, we can run the pipelines, and then we can run the notebook in order to transform the data and save it in the workspace. So the first thing we will do is here in the deployment pipeline, we will run to copy all the data from the source that we have, which is a Microsoft template, to the lakehouse. Okay, so now we can see that all the activities from the different dimensions on the fact table are already succeed. So we can already close the ingestion pipeline. And the second step will be running the notebook, okay? Because now we have all the data in the lakehouse, but we need to transform it and update it to the warehouse. In order to do this, we will run this notebook. As I told you before, here we have the variable library parameters, so we don't need to change any name as we already changed the parameters before. Also, here in the transformation, you can see that we already have the 50 instead of the 20 because we have changed it before the deployment. So we can run. First of all, we can click the run all, and the notebook will connect to the environment that we will use to run the notebook. So as you can see, the run for the different cells are pretty quick. You can see 50 seconds here, less than a second. The only cell that will take some time will be the write to the warehouse cell, in which we are writing all the transformations into the warehouse. Okay, so now you can see that the cell it's already done, and as you can see here on the top, it's already saved by default, so we can close the notebook. We need to stop and close the current session, and that's it. Okay, so now that we have the data ingested in the lakehouse, we can check it. We can go to the storage folder, and here in the warehouse, we can check if the tables are already there. We go to the DVO schema, and here in the tables function, we have the different dimensions and also the fact. Last but not least, we should go back to the deployment pipeline, because the first time that we deploy to a new stage, in this case the production, we need to set the deployment rules. So the deployment rules, as you can see, we can only set them for the semantic model in order to take the data from the production warehouse and not the integration workspace. If you don't do this practice, if we go to the production stage and we go to the data lineage, you can see here that the semantic model, which is this one, it's taking the data from the integration workspace, not the production one. In order to avoid these things to happen, we should go to the deployment pipeline again. And here in the deployment rules, we click the semantic model. And the data source rule, we need to add a new rule. In this case, this is the only available option from the from, which is the warehouse data. So we can click this one. And finally, here we need to close, we need to choose the other. And here for the server, we need to check the connection string for the server. Where we can check this, we need to close this pop-up, and we should go to the workspace. Okay, so we can click here in the list view, storage folder, and we click inside the warehouse. which is where we have the tables that we are using in the semantic model. And here below, we see the copy SQL connection string. We just copy this string, and we can go back to the deployment pipeline. We go back to the rules, as I showed you before, and we add a new rule. In this case, we choose the only that we have available, and we have to choose here the other. And in the server, we need to delete all of this and copy the new rule and the new string that we have copied from the warehouse, and just click save. So now that we have this rule in place, we need to deploy again the semantic model to production. Even if it's the same as the source, we need to deploy it again, because and you can see here that it's different from the source. Sorry, so we can click and deploy again. Here in the node, we can add, for example, adding deployment rules to the production stage, and we deploy. So now, using this rule, now the semantic model will take the data from the production workspace and not the integration one. Here, as we are only deploying one item, should be easier than before. As you can see here, it's already done. Let's give the deployment pipeline some time in order to set all the things. And now all the items are the same as source. In order to check what we have done, we can go back to the production environment, and we can just refresh the page just in case. And now if we go to the data lineage, here we don't see anymore the integration warehouse link. In this case, if we don't see any link, it's because the data is already from the same workspace, in this case, the production workspace. So now we have the semantic model already in place in the production workspace, in the reporting folder. And here we need to refresh the semantic model with the new data. Here we can see that is refreshing, will take some time. Okay, and now the semantic model is refreshed. The first thing that we need to check here is that in the settings, we need to check here in the gateway and cloud connection. Here we should use a connection, not have the default sync on, because not we could get different errors in the refresh. So we need to use our own connection or create a connection. In order to create a new connection, we just need to click the create connection, and here you just add a connection name, and here the authentication method that works for you. In this case, I'm going to discard the changes, and once we have done all of the connection setting, we can go to the report, which is at the end the final product, and here we can see the report with all the charts. Also here with the new title that we have added, and with the new measure, which is the quantity, not the profit as we had before. And that's all. This is at the end the final product. We have started from extracting the data, transforming it, and finally we have this report in the production stage, which is the last one, the last stage of the deployment pipeline. So that's all on my side. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Mark, for this very interesting demonstration. So now let's go to our next use case. In here, it's going to be using Azure DevOps pipelines to deploy the solution. Again, this demonstration is also going to be based on the same solution, but using DevOps in a more simplified way, because we only would like to showcase the main possibilities of the tool. So first, let's cover which are the pros and cons of Azure DevOps pipelines. Basically, It provides you the feature to fully automatize your process. So it generates infrastructure as code, and it lets you deploy the whole solution based on code. And it can be integrated with many other Azure services, and yeah, and interact with any available API. Of course, it gives you the possibility to generate much more advanced CI/CD processes, and it lets you add approvals, add data validation, generate triggers, even create rollback strategies, and so on. And I will highly recommend you to check some of our previous videos on this series, where we, for example, cover on how you can add some semantic model validation within this DevOps pipeline. In this case, we are not going to be covering that on that demonstration because it's a much more simpler design, only to showcase which are the possibilities of this tool. And then in the cons, it's that it's a much more complex and relied on platform solution that may require your developers to have knowledge in coding tools, in API accessing and documenting and understanding how these APIs work. It requires more setup and more maintenance effort from platform and access perspective. And it's not directly integrated in Fabric. So you may need to rely on creating some service principles to interact between DevOps and the Fabric platform. Okay, so let me introduce you Victor, who is going to drive you through the next demonstration, where we are going to showcase how you can deploy a solution where you deploy different features in the previously showcased solution, in this case using Azure DevOps pipelines.
Thanks, Marcel. So in this second part of the demo, I will show you how we can deploy using Azure DevOps, Feature Workspace, and the Fabric CI/CD library. So first of all, this is the architecture that we are going to use in the second part of the demo. As we can see, we have two main workspaces, integration and production. We reduce from 3 environments to 2 in this second demo to simplify. Both workspaces have a corresponding branch in Azure DevOps, but they are not connected into the workspace. Only the feature branch is connected to Git in the workspace. So every time we want to do a new development, we will create a new feature workspace and a new feature branch. And this feature branch will be based on the integration branch. So when the development is finished, we will do a pull request from the feature branch into the integration branch. And once the pull request has been merged, then we will deploy these objects to the workspace using the Fabric CI/CD library. And then finally, we will do another pull request to merge these changes from integration to production. And again, we will deploy into the workspace using the Fabric CI/CD library. So the solution is more complex than the first one, but at the same time, it will give us a lot of more flexibility. So let's start with the demo. So here I have my the integration workspace with the solution that is the same that we showed in the first demo. So I will not go into details again of every object that we have here. Then we have the production workspace, which is empty because I didn't deploy yet. We will do the deployment now. And then we also have the feature workspace, which right now has the same content than the integration because the feature branch demo, it's based on the integration branch. So let's start deploying the solution from integration to production for the first time. So I will go to Azure DevOps, and we can see here, this is my integration branch. And here I have the workspace and I have all the items that are on Fabric. The first thing that we need to do is to do a pull request from this integration branch to the production branch, which right now it's empty because we didn't do any deployment yet. So I will create a pull request. So this pull request can be created manually, like I'm gonna do, or you can create your own pipelines and add your own logic into the pull request, like checks, approvals, and so on. But for this demo, I will just do it manually. So I'm gonna do a pull request from integration into production, and it will move everything to production. So here I will just say initial pull request, and I will create the pull request. Here I will just complete doing a merge. And let's wait to the merge. Okay, now the changes have been merged. So in production, we can see that we have now the same content as the integration. So now we need to push all these objects into the workspace. And for doing this, we're going to use the Fabric CI/CD library. So the Fabric CI/CD library is a Python library that allows us to perform deployments without the need of using the Microsoft Fabric APIs or the Fabric deployment pipelines like we did in the first part of the demo. It's important that only the items that have source control are supported. And one of the main features of this library is that supports parameterization using this parameter YAM file that we can use to parameterize the deployments. So for example, imagine that we have a data pipeline that is connected to a SQL server and it ingests data from a SQL server. And on development, we will connect to the development SQL server. And on production, we will connect to the production SQL server. So when we deploy, we want in the production workspace to reference the production connection. So this can be done using, for example, this parameter YAML file. So yeah, let's first see our solution. So here in my main branch, I have a pipeline that I'm gonna use to call my Python code that has all the logic to do the deployments. So this is my pipeline. And then if I go to the integration branch, here I have this folder which I have this Python code, and this Python code is the one that we will use to do the deployments. And then the third object that we need here is the parameter YAML file, and this needs to be stored on the root path of our workspace. So in this case, I have it here. And here we can see that we are using the find and replace parameter. So Fabric CI/CD library allows us to use different parameters. So please go to the official documentation, and here we can see all the different parameters that we can use. For this demo, I will only use the find replace value. So when we deploy it, it will search for this value and then it will replace with this another value depending if I'm on integration or if I'm in production. This is important because we have different, if I go back to the Fabric, we have different items that we want to deploy. So for example, we have the notebook, we have pipelines, warehouse, and lakehouse. So for example, like I said, when we deploy, for example, this pipeline, we want to store the data or save the data in the production lakehouse, not in the integration lakehouse. So we will use the parameter YAML file to do this. But there are some cases which we don't need to use the parameter YAML file because it's already covered by default by the Fabric CI/CD library. So in this case, for example, our pipeline and our lakehouse are in the same uh, workspace. So in this case, automatically the library will repoint to the proper lakehouse because it's in the same workspace. But for example, if we have our lakehouse in another workspace, then you need to use this file to do this parameterization. So in our case, we are only going to use this parameter YAML file to point the semantic model to the correct warehouse. Because according to the documentation, even if it's in the same, the source and the semantic model are in the same workspace, not always will be repointed automatically. So just to be safe, we're gonna do this using this parameter file. Okay, so let's start with the deployment. Uh, so I will go to my pipeline, okay, and I will run this pipeline. Here there is one thing that it's important because it's the first time that we are deploying on production. So right now I don't know yet the ID of the warehouse of production because this ID is generated automatically when we deploy. So what I'm gonna do is to deploy everything except the semantic model and the report. So here, this is my pipeline. I want to deploy to production, and the item types that I want to deploy is the notebook, the data pipeline. I also want to deploy the warehouse, the lakehouse, and the variable library. So now I will run this pipeline. And this pipeline, what it's gonna do, it's gonna deploy all the objects into the workspace. After this pipeline has finished, what we will do is modify the parameter YAML file with the ID of the warehouse of production. So first we need to deploy the warehouse. So we know which is the ID. So now it's deploying all the objects. So yeah, we just need to wait some seconds here. The first time it takes more time because we're deploying all the objects. But for example, the next time, because we're only gonna deploy the semantic model, it will be much faster. But right now it's deploying all the solution except the semantic model and the report. One thing that I forgot to mention is the variable library, because our environment parameter of the Fabric workspace object of the library, it's the same name as the value set. So I will go to the variable library. So our environment parameter is the same as the default value set of production. So when I deploy this variable library, it automatically will change the value set to production. So let's just check now. Okay, so the deployment has been finished. So I will just go to the production, and we can see that we have already all the objects and the deployment has finished. And if we go to the variable library, we can see that the value set active is the production one. So it has been changed automatically by the library. So now I need to go to the warehouse, and I will copy the ID of the warehouse. Now I will go back to Azure DevOps, and I will change the parameter YAML file. So let's go back here. Let's go to the integration branch. Let's go to my workspace. And here I already left this prepared. So when it says production, here I need to replace this with my workspace of production, and here the ID of the warehouse. So I will paste here the ID of the warehouse, and also I will copy the ID of the workspace. So now our YAML file will automatically change the workspace ID to the production one when we deploy to production, and also the warehouse. So the semantic model will point automatically to the warehouse, which is our source, our production warehouse. So I will just commit this. I will do a pull request again to propagate this change to the production branch. So I will do integration to production, only one change because we will only change this file. I will just create the pull request. I will complete the pull request. Okay. And now I will deploy only these two objects. So let's go back to the pipeline. Let's run the pipeline in production, and I want to move the semantic model and the report. So let's run again the pipeline. The pipeline is already running. Okay, now it's deploying the semantic model and the report. And after that, we will check that it's indeed pointing to the production warehouse. Okay, so the deployment has finished. Let's go back to the workspace. Let's just refresh the workspace. Okay, we can see here the reporting that we have the semantic model, and we also have the report. So if I go to the semantic model, okay, we can see the source is the warehouse from production. So we already changed the source, so it's pointing to the production warehouse. So now what I will do is to run for the first time our pipeline and our notebook. So we have data in the production workspace. So I will just go to the pipeline, and I will just run it for the first time. Okay. Now the pipeline is running, and we will just wait. So all the data has been stored in the lakehouse, and also we can see here the destination. It's the production lakehouse, because like I said, because our pipeline and lakehouse are on the same workspace, when we deploy this pipeline, it automatically changed the destination to the production lakehouse. So let's just wait now. Okay, so the pipeline has been finished. So now I will execute the notebook because right now we have the data on the lakehouse, and I will execute the notebook. So we do the data cleaning, and then the data it's stored on the warehouse. So again, I will just run the notebook and just wait. So the notebook has finished. So we will check that we will check the lakehouse and the warehouse just to check that everything is in there. So I will just open the lakehouse, and here we should have the dimensions and the fact tables that we just set using the pipeline. So all the tables are here. And then if I open the warehouse, we will find all the tables that we created using our notebook. So, okay, so all the tables are here. So now we already deployed all the solution from integration to production, and we change the semantic model to point to the production warehouse using the parameter yum file. So let's just open also the report so we know that everything is working. So we can see that the report it's working and it's pointing to the production warehouse. So now what I will do it's the same changes that we did in the first part of the demo. So we will modify the notebook, we will add a new measure, and then we will add this measure to the report. So basically we will change the notebook, the semantic model, and the report. So like I said at the beginning, all the changes we are going to all do these changes in the workspace, in the feature workspace. Okay, so right now the feature workspace has all the same contents than in integration. So I will open, and also this workspace is connected to Git. It's the only one that it's connected to Git. So we will do these changes, we will commit these changes, and then we will do the pull request. But first, let's change the notebook. And here I will do the same changes that we did on the first part of the demo. So I will modify this calculated column that we are creating here, and just change from 20 to 50 here. And I will just close the notebook. So now I will open the semantic model and I will add the new measure, the same measure that we added on the first part of the demo. So I will open the semantic model. I will go to my measures table. I will create a new measure and I will add this quantity measure. Sorry, like this. So it's the same that as we did on the first part of the demo. Okay, so now we already added these new measures. I will close the semantic model and I will open the report. Okay, and I will edit the report. I'm doing the same changes that we did before. So on the first part of the demo, we changed this to quantity. So I will do the same. So I will remove the profit here, and we will add the quantity. And then the top three, we will change it to the quantity also. And then the title, we will change it to top three employees by quantity. So I will save these changes and I will go back to the workspace. So now we already did all the changes that we wanted. So now I will commit all the changes to the Git. So I will just say here new development, and we will commit the notebook, the semantic model, and the report. So I just click commit. Okay, so now let's go back to Azure DevOps. I will go to the feature branch. So the feature branch demo, and we can see the commits here. So we can see the commit here, and we can see the changes that we did. So now what we need to do is to deploy this to integration. So what we're gonna do, we are gonna do a pull request from the feature branch into the integration branch. So again, I will create the pull request using the UI, but you can use pipelines and add logic, checks, and so on. So I will just do the pull request from my feature branch demo into my integration. And we can see here that we are just changing the notebook, the report, and the semantic model. So here I will just say pull request for new development. I will create the pull request. And again, I will just complete the pull request. And so now it's merging all the changes into the integration branch. Okay, so now these changes have been merged into the integration branch, but we need to push these changes into our integration workspace. So I will go to my integration workspace. So again, now we need to execute our pipeline using the Fabric CI/CD library. So I will go to pipelines. I will execute my pipeline. I wanna deploy to integration, and I wanna deploy a notebook, a report, the semantic model. I will just do it on a semantic model and then the report. So I just click run, and when this pipeline finish, we will have deploy all these three changes to our integration workspace. So let's just wait to the pipeline to finish, and then we can check that these changes has been deployed to the workspace. Okay, so the deployment has finished. So let's go back to Fabric. I will just refresh and I will open the three items just to be sure that the changes have been deployed correctly. So let's open the notebook and we will go to the line that we changed and to verify that this has been changed. So we can see here that it's 50 now instead of 20. So the changes have been correctly deployed. So I will just close the notebook. Then I will go to the semantic model. And we can see here that we have the new measure. So the new measure is here. And now I will open the report. And we can see that we have the change. So now we have the top 3 employees by quantity instead of profit. So we already deployed the changes that we did on the feature workspace and the feature branch into the integration branch. So now just to finish, we will do the deployment into the production workspace. So again, what we need to do is create a pull request from our integration branch to the production branch. So I will go to pull requests. I will create a new pull request from integration into production. Again, only 3 changes. I will just say pull request for new development. I will just create a pull request. Again, I will complete and merge the changes into the production branch. And right now we just need to do the same. So we will deploy again. We will push the changes from our Git to the workspace. And in this case, we will verify that when we deploy, the semantic model is pointing to the production warehouse. So again, I will just go to the pipelines. I will just execute my pipeline production. Again, we only want to deploy the notebook, the semantic model, and the report. So I will just run this pipeline. Here, we need to verify that the changes have been deployed and also that the semantic model is pointing to the production warehouse. So let's just wait to the pipeline to finish. Okay, so let's go back to Fabric. I will open the production workspace. Again, just to verify, I will open the notebook and check that the change has been deployed. So we will go to the specific row Okay, we can see here that we have the change. Now I will open the semantic model. We can verify that it's pointing to the production warehouse, and we can also verify that we have the new measure here. And finally, I will just open the report. And here we can see that the change also has been applied. So now we have the top 3 employees by quantity instead of by profit. So basically right now, we deployed for the first time from integration to production using Azure DevOps and the Fabric CI/CD library. We also made some changes using this feature workspace and the feature branch. And we deployed all these changes first to integration and finally to production. So can see the difference between using the Fabric deployment pipelines and using this other scenario. So thanks, and back to you, Marcel.
Okay, thank you, Victor, for this very interesting demonstration. So now I would like to have a high-level comparison between these two different approaches that we have just showed to you. So first of all, in terms of ease of use, I will say, and you may have already seen that Fabric deployment pipelines is much more straightforward. It doesn't really require a lot of coding knowledge or API knowledge. So it's only based on UI, and it has a lot of possibilities, or at least the ones that Microsoft is providing. On the other hand, we have Azure DevOps pipelines, which require much more scripting knowledge, and also it relies a lot on more infrastructure support and access control. Talking about customization, in this case, Fabric deployment pipelines, it's much more limited. It has some possibilities, but it's restricted on what Microsoft delivers. And in other hand, we have Azure DevOps pipelines, which the possibilities here are, I will say, much more wide in terms of what the APIs that, for example, the CI/CD library provides, or on the coding options we have from the platform. On the other hand, we have integration. In this case, Fabric is only integrated within the Fabric platform, and Azure DevOps can interact with much more systems within your Azure platform. In automatization terms, basically, Fabric deployment pipelines have this kind of manual setup required. But as I told you, and we have a webinar explaining that in one of the series, we can also automatize these deployment pipelines using Azure DevOps again. And in other hand, in the second demonstration, we showcase that Azure DevOps pipelines have full CI/CD automatization possibilities, and in there you can do, I will say, whatever you require in your solution based on code. And then in the governance side, Fabric deployment pipelines are only dependent on the role access control on your workspaces. And Azure DevOps pipelines, it's much more complex because you not only rely on that, you rely on how you interact against the API, how you deploy your process, who have access to your Git libraries and repositories inside DevOps. So I will say it's a much more advanced security feature, but it also adds a lot of complexity in your solution. Okay, so let's wrap up and go to the conclusions. So here, basically, I would like to overview in which cases you should choose one or another of the solutions that we propose in this webinar. Basically, the use of Fabric deployment pipelines is in case you need a quick and easy solution that requires a lower deployment times, I would say. And here, the most important part is that your solution is fastly deployed. Here, you also need to think about which type of team, or which is the technical level of your team, or which are the tools that they are more comfortable with. So if your team is primarily using Fabric, or maybe it's more used on working on Power BI working tools, here I will highly recommend to go with Fabric and not rely on high-level coding solutions. In other hand, we have Azure DevOps pipelines, and in this case, I will recommend Azure DevOps pipelines if your solution requires a much more productive and professional, I will say, or automatization process, where you have a lot of requirements on, for example, triggering authorization and secure deployment process. The other consideration here may be that if you have other systems integrated within your platform, not only relying on Fabric. So in this case, you may also need Azure DevOps to interact with these other systems. And again, if you require much more advanced CI/CD capabilities, for example, I don't know, adding semantic model data quality validations like we have showcased in other webinars of this series, then again, we highly recommend to go for Azure DevOps pipelines integrated in Fabric. So thank you for watching this webinar. I hope it clarified a little when you have to choose between one solution or another in your Fabric projects or developments. And I love to hear your questions, and see you again in the next webinar.